Hi, welcome to Learning Pro Intros. I'm Nicole Papiano. I'm your instructional designer, and I'm here today with Kevin Thorn. Kevin, can you tell a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Kevin Thorn, and I am accidental instructional designer, developer, if you will. I'm a retired Army, and then when I left the Army, I just one of those, what am I going to do with my life now? Went back to school and got my IT degree and started down a IT career, thinking that was my new career. And about 3 years into that, I was invited to the training department to help implement an LMS and put an e-learning program together. And back then, I had no idea what they were talking about, but I was interested in training and instruction and things like that. And with the IT background, and I'm a cartoonist, graphic artist, whatever you want to call it, from young wee years of my life. So I was seeing it as an opportunity to mash all my interest into one thing, and it turns out this is where I was supposed to be. So spent another decade in corporate, kind of honing my skills, if you will. And then I left corporate in 2012 and started NuggetHead Studioz, and now it's a boutique, custom design, development, visual thinking, creative design, game, whatever, anything related to learning, we'll figure it out.
That's pretty cool. I've seen your website and some of your artwork, and it's really fun. I love the style. Can you tell us the story about the little guy up here?
Mr. Nuggethead, yeah. So I will give props to the Twitter community. That's where it came from. That was where it originated. Yeah. So let's go back to corporate. When Twitter came out, when 08, 09, somewhere around there, I can't remember exactly when. One of the early adopters jumped in, got a Twitter handle, and my handle is Learn Nuggets. And I had a blog of the same name back then where I would write weekly nuggets of things on how to do things. And because of the cartoonists and stuff, and I was reluctant of putting a photograph of my face out on the internet back then because I was still concerned about the whole, I don't want people to know who I am.
Yeah, yeah.
So this guy kind of fell out the end of my pencil one day, and I said, well, I'll just use him for now. And put it up there. And then throughout the Twitter community and Learn Chat, some of the other Twitter chats, and just getting to know folks in the community, turned out I got to know a lot of the folks who are my great friends today a decade later. And then it was an annual conference. Actually, it was Learning Solutions Conference that just got canceled. It was that year, so I guess 09, 2010. And I was like, oh, really looking forward to meeting everybody and that sort of thing. And then it dawned on me, nobody knows what I look like.
Yeah.
So I had this embroidered on a shirt, like a polo shirt. And then I took a selfie of myself with the shirt on and posted it out on Twitter and said, hey, look, find the shirt, you find me, kind of thing. It turns out it worked flawlessly because I got to meet everybody. They found me that way. And then fast forward another year or so as we kept having conversations. And then at some point, just, I don't know who one person, but just generally speaking, the character sort of took on its own persona, and then people were asking Mr. Nuggethead, what would he think of this, or what advice would Mr. Nuggethead give about this thing or whatever. And I just played along, and then I would play along as that persona. So then when I quit my corporate job and started my company, I just played homage back to where the name came from and called it NuggetHead Studioz. And then the sort of the theme behind it is, in all seriousness, we're all nugget heads at some point. We all make mistakes. We all bump heads together trying to figure out client relationships and trying to figure out projects. But in the end, we're all in this together, and it's just about getting the work done. So learn from the mistakes that we make along the way and chalk them up as learning something new about what not to do the next time, and let's move on.
That is such a great story. I'm going to make a confession and say that I was on Twitter around the same time, totally different field, but same problem. I did not come up with that creative solution. Nobody knew who I was. And I retired my stick figure.
Oh, you did?
Picture of me. Yeah. That is awesome.
Well, I keep thinking about, you know how people, companies or whatever, they rebrand or they
Mm-hmm.
update their logo or they do something different to kind of, and I always think, and I'll go back to the drawing table every once in a while and I think, well, what if he looked like, I think, no, just leave him alone. He's fine the way he is. Now, he has been accused of being a Muppet
Oh,
and,
the
and
Muppets
an,
are great.
and an angry bird at one point. So
No, I like him. I think he's great. Very playful, and
thank you.
I now that I know the story behind it, I like it even
Yeah.
more.
Right.
Yeah. So we kind of got the full arch of how you got where you are today, but in terms of like taking the jump from corporate to your own company, maybe you could talk about that because I know there's a lot of folks out there who would love to get into freelancing or building their
Hmm.
own agency and just don't even know what that looks like.
Yeah. And again, it was probably by accident. So I can probably speak to it better today than I could when I started. Um, and it stemmed from, uh, and again, this was right around 2010 ish. The iPad had just come out in 2010. You know, the iPhone would come out, 2007. So mobile technology was really sort of the shiny new object trend, right? Everybody was going to mobile. And there were some other technologies like QR codes was the big thing back then. And I was looking at different opportunities to leverage all this technology and the things that we were doing in corporate training. And I was like, wow, there's some really cool things that we can do. So then I would come up with an idea, but it costs money, right? So you have to pitch an idea and budgets on fiscal years. And this is the hard lesson I learned about, how corporate business and the speed of business and budgets and all that thing, excuse me, how that worked. And you can pitch an idea, but your next fiscal year budget has to be in by a certain month of the previous year in order to get the money to spend the following year. And by then, technology is moving too fast. You get a certain amount of money approved in April to spend in October. Well, come October, something else is, and it might even be the first quarter, it might be like second quarter or something. So it was getting frustrating, and I couldn't move as fast as I wanted to in terms of my creativity, in terms of ideas that I wanted to explore. So, and in corporate too, and I don't, maybe some folks aren't as strict, but the company I worked for, you spend anything more than $10,000, you had to show a 15% ROI. So you
Wow.
had to write up a big ROI document on why you're asking for $10,000. And I spent more time doing that than I did actually exploring the technology. So it was really just a frustrating thing. So I ended up freelancing just to really exhaust my own creative curiosity. And by freelancing, I was exposed to the world of e-learning and instructional design as this big umbrella. However, different industries approach it totally opposite than certain industries: healthcare, government, transportation. Each of them have their own internal way of doing things when it comes to design and development and training. So that started sparking more interest. I started getting embedded more into the conference scene, if you will, where I
Mm-hmm.
started attending more conferences and meeting more folks. Um, and then just started freelancing. And again, the freelancing was just a way to just kind of continue the hobby, if you will. And then freelancing became a part-time job by accident.
Because you're good at what you do, you probably got busy.
Yeah, I got busy and not really thinking that I was ever going to go out on my own. But it had gotten to the point where I was literally working two full-time jobs. And then it wasn't so much stressful as it was I was feeling guilty because my mind was on my freelance work while I was at the day job. And I would try to field emails and do freelance work during my lunch hour, but your mind is still split. You're not 100%. And I kind of felt guilty. This company is paying me to be here and I'm mentally not present here because I'm thinking about what I got to do when I get home. Um, and even then, I would work till 11, 12 o'clock every night. I'd work every weekend and it was just crazy. And then a very smart person, very wise, much smarter than me, my wife, told me that you're going to have to make a decision. Either scale it back to a hobby level and rededicate your career to corporate, stop doing this altogether, or quit lollygagging and kick it up a notch and make something happen. And that last piece of advice was, okay, maybe there's something here. That was 2011, end of 2011. So I put a business plan together for 2012 and basically said, okay, I'm going to focus on it as a real business to see if I have basically the discipline to run my own company. And I was 4 months later, it had built up to the point where I was ready. So I left in April of 2012 and started. And then it was just a wing and a prayer, and I don't even think I had a wing at that point either.
Must have been a better wing than you thought.
Well, I'm very fortunate. I was very blessed to have a lot of really good clients at the time. I had a good client base. And it wasn't one of the things that, and I don't know if we're at the point where I offer advice, but looking back.
Sure. Sounds good. Yeah. What is that advice?
Don't try not to think of a date. Like, I'm going to quit my job on my birthday, or if I don't get my bonus this year, I'm going to quit on this day. I would caution people to think about it from a date perspective. It took me about 2 years of freelancing, and then you have to be disciplined to ensure that you don't mix the income. You know, your day job or your household income stays in one account, and then freelance, you have to treat it like a business. So it's getting that business acumen part of your brain working, and then put all your freelance money in a different account. And then any money you spend out of that account goes to the business. Like if you have to upgrade, buy a new laptop, or you have to buy software or something like that. And then my goal was I wanted 3 months of my corporate salary in the bank, that when I quit and it didn't work out, I had a 90-day cushion to go look for another job if I needed to. So it's get your, and only that person, you're going to know what your 90-day salary would be. So whatever you're making in your day job, put 90 days of that in the bank. And when you get to that number, then, okay, now I can consider stepping away.
That is fantastic advice. I 100% agree. And that's what I tell people too. Have at least 3 months, because I think you'll take on jobs you don't want to take is also part of, at least for me, part of that equation. If you feel panicked, like you have to take the cheapest job or the most boring job just to get by, that doesn't feel good.
No, and I did the same thing when I got started. And probably the one thing one of the early clients said, "What's your hourly rate?" I don't know. I mean, I just do the work, And so it was like this slap in the face, like, oh, wow, I probably should put a rate card together. So I'm learning all these things along the way. And then later it'd be like, well, we need you to do an RFP document. I was like, well, what's that? And then I would think, I have to go study and figure out what that is. So I kind of did it backwards. Like I said, I just dove in. And then when I ran up to an obstacle, then I basically took myself back to school to go figure out, how do I get past this and move on? I wouldn't recommend that.
I think it's a similar journey for a lot of folks who hopped into freelancing. Yeah. I can say I've done some of the same. So is there something, other than, I guess, the business acumen stuff, is there something you would recommend for folks who are new or aspiring just to the learning field as a whole?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming, and it can be the anxiety. If you look at job descriptions today, and it's one of the things that I've had a couple debates and discussions about. If you look at a typical job description today for an instructional designer, first off, let's back up a minute. There's no single title. There's no consistency in the title and the roles in different jobs around different industries. You can be an instructional technologist or an instructional designer or a design and development specialist. So, and it's all kind of the same thing, but it's really difficult to kind of narrow in on a single role that you're looking for. And then if you look at the job description, it's like
to know everything.
Well, yeah,
and then some.
you get excited. It's like, wow, they're going to pay me $300,000 a year because that's a lot of skill to know, and you got to have a lot of knowledge to take on all of that. And then, of course, the debates are the HR generalists who write those know for a fact that they're not going to get somebody with all those skills. But that's the debate. Yeah, but you're turning people away who think that are probably quality candidates, but they're intimidated by all this list because they don't have this, so they're not even applying because they don't think they could qualify. So that's the debate, right? But I would, my recommendation is have a good. Well, first off, find out what your niche is. Are you an instructional designer? Are you a developer? Are you a visual designer? Is audio recording and voice, is that your thing? You can't learn it all at one time. Figure out what you're most comfortable and easy in terms of, I can learn better, I can increase my skills in this area, and start there. So if it's instructional design, have a good solid understanding of theory and practice and adult learning and those sorts of things where you can have those business conversations. If it's development, skill up on a couple of the more popular authoring environments, and know web technologies, know how the web works, know how the internet works. And I'm not just talking about an Articulate Storyline or an Adobe Captivate. I'm talking about when you publish it up to a server, how does it communicate, and all of the LMS pieces and parts. So have a good understanding of that back end piece as well. And then, like I said, even if in a visual design, have a good understanding of not just being a visual designer, but graphics for learning, or visual graphics for design, instructional graphics, infographics, things like that. That's the way to start. If you're intimidated by getting started, just find what your niche is and find something that you're comfortable with, and then you can build on the other stuff as you go along.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice also. And where did you start? What would you say your niche was? It sounds like you've grown a little bit into all the
Wow. Well,
places.
I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm an anomaly because I've been a geek my whole life, a nerd, if you will. Because I was a graphic comic cartoonist, my whole life. So I've always drawn cartoons and comics. And then when in my military career, it was all about training. So that's where I got the interest of the satisfaction of teaching somebody how to do something, and then they disseminate that down to the next person. There's some level of satisfaction there. And then when I went back to school to get my IT degree, it was just because I needed a job.
Right.
And it was right around the late 90s when, Y2K scare and all that. And it's like, wow, this is pretty cool stuff. People are fixing things. So I'm going to go into that field. And I think the light turned on when I started using Flash 4, version 4, and understanding HTML and how the web works. And then I got excited because the story I didn't tell you is that I sent my portfolio to Disney when I was in high school and got
You wanted to be an Imagineer.
I did, and I got rejected with flying colors because I didn't have certain things in my portfolio. And it was that little depressing thing when you're in high school. It's like, oh my gosh, my whole world's over. What am I going to do? But then when I started learning HTML and Flash, I was like, wow, I can animate my own cartoons now. So then it was just that self-teaching sort of mentality I was going through. And so I had the geeky side, I had the creative side. And then the military taught me that training, sort of getting up, facilitation and training. And then when I landed in corporate training department, it just, again, that big light came like, wow, I can just bring all these interests and mash them into one central career. And then it's just, put your head down and go learn everything you can, be a sponge, learn it all.
Magical unicorn, not an anomaly. Well, just magical being.
Yeah.
No, it's really cool. And like I said, your portfolio is, you can see all those things when you're on your website, and just how unique your style is and your approach. And I think the tone that you take and the way you kind of get into learning is really unique and pretty cool. So I think if you are new to the learning field, you should definitely check out Kevin's website.
Oh, thank you.
So before we wrap it up, is there anything else you want to say, or?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, I love talking about. I can talk about this all day, but the one last piece of advice would just be patient with yourself. So if you're looking into this as a career, whether you go out on your own or whether it's in some type of corporate environment, technology is going to be way ahead of us anyway. So trying to keep up with the latest and greatest technology, you're just going to stress yourself out. Just always remember the fundamentals, stay with the basics, learn a little bit at a time. And regardless if you're on your own or in corporate, having a good sense of business acumen and why we're doing things. And last thing is, not everything's a training problem. So.
Right. Yes. As much as we would like to make the income from solving every training problem,
I can fix it.
There are definitely times when it's not.
I'm a trainer. I can fix it.
We do wish. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today,
Thank you for
Kevin.
inviting me.
Yes, it was really a pleasure. And I think, the folks who are watching right now are going to have so much to take away and think about as a result of what you told us. So I really appreciate it. If you are watching, Kevin's information is going to be in the description below the video. So definitely check it out. Go to NuggetHead's website. And thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.